7:09. I have to say, in addition to the Zoom recording, we also have videotaping being done here in this room. So I'm supposed to advise you guys that open session public meetings are subject to being videotaped and recorded. Your image and voice is being recorded, not just maybe. I'm going to open this and start with Mr. Lamone, how do I say that? Oh, and I can't hear you.
No.
We don't have any sound, but you don't seem to be muted. Now you're muted. Oop, and Janet's
Okay, we'll try both mutes. We have two mute buttons.
Ah.
And I turn one off, the other one goes on, so it's neat.
Well, now you're good.
Got it. All right,
Lemoyne, okay.
Yes.
Well, welcome to Capital Planning. We look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Absolutely. So I'm going to try to do a screen share here. Hopefully everything here shows up. You should see a black window. Hopefully. What about now?
Yep.
All right.
Nothing yet.
I'm almost pressing all the right
You said
buttons.
black window.
Okay.
All right. So,
Can you hear him, Eloise?
my name's Lee Lemoyne. I run a company called Modular Communication.
Oh, God.
And we oversee radio systems. We'll jump right into the whole reason we're here. We've got some pressing issues with the existing two-way radio system in place in Berlin. I know that these are not new issues. I'm sure you're aware of them, but just to recap, the radio's critical to use of all the first responders in the network. I've been involved in public safety personally for 18 years, having been a full-time firefighter, and I've been on the call service the entire time I've moved up here to New Hampshire. A lot of people don't understand that radio is used because you can talk to everybody at once. The one-to-many capabilities of radio are very important to keeping everybody that's responding to an emergency simultaneously aware of whatever it is you might have to add to that conversation. So whether that's providing an additional size-up, requesting additional personnel, calling a mayday, whatever the vital message is, you need to make sure that gets out. Again, police service, fire service use radios very differently in real life, but again, our job as a radio service company is to make sure that every word gets through the radio system and is heard where it needs to be heard. We know that the police, fire, and DPW agencies in Berlin have been experiencing issues for quite some time. Whether that presents itself as inconsistent radio coverage, in other words, it works today, I could be in that same spot tomorrow, it doesn't work right, and then 3 days later it seems to be fine again for a week or a day, and it's been hit or miss. I know that the fire department had purchased some new radios in hopes that maybe it was their older equipment that was causing them the issue. We've confirmed that the issue is definitely in the infrastructure. And, we have some vivid recollections of things used to work a lot better. That's pretty common as far as in my role, joining a department to visit these type of issues initially. They have recollections of structure fires or police incidents, car chases, whatever it may be, where they know that the radio worked 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 8 months ago, whatever it might be timeline-wise. They can tell you this used to work and now it doesn't. So we're not questioning any of that. Again, Mr. Unreadable Dispatches, it's pretty bad when we can't alert emergencies, emergency responders to the actual emergency. We know that we've got different players that are involved in this. We've got Neshoba Valley Dispatch, and then we've got the individual town agencies. So we've noticed consistency where there's no given scenario that is just bad. this is when we start looking towards the infrastructure as being the problem. It's not a specific highway truck. It's not a specific fire truck. It's not a specific, officer's radio, whether it's portable or a vehicle radio. There's no commonality to that complaint. And, this also affects our ability to talk outside our community when we're calling for help. Mutual aid is a big part of the fire service these days. It's becoming more commonplace with police. If you're calling for help and you need to have those agencies tune in to what's going on at your scene, it's very important to be able to have those messages be clear and legible. At least it starts to paint a picture to those responders that are sitting there in the fire truck racing towards the scene. They can hear what's going on. They can hear that there's calls for water, or there's calls for additional personnel. They can hear what's going on. And when the radio system no longer covers beyond the border of the town, that becomes a problem. You have to be very, very close to the incident. That's if they haven't switched to a different channel. I know that's been a problem, at least plaguing the fire department for some time now. And then there is no communication until you arrive on scene. Police obviously don't have that luxury. They rely 100% on the radio infrastructure to provide them coverage. They're often in a scenario where might have a few officers on that can back them up, but they're relying on their communications with the Neshoba Valley as their primary dispatch center to be able to get them help if they need it. And there are areas of the system that presently do not have coverage. Again, we can get into some maps here in a little bit and kind of show you what that looks like due to these impairments. So, the question comes up, how do we fix the coverage issues we're having? Well, we need to basically go in and do an evaluation, figure out why are you having these issues, and is there a single point of failure? I know explaining a radio network is a lot like rocket surgery, so I'm just going to kind of take it at a high level and look at what a radio system is. So at least we kind of all have an idea of what it is we're talking about here. So just some quick pictures, kind of paint a picture. As you can tell, this was a while back. This is the Coburn Road site. It's one of the 2 radio sites in the system. And we are in the shelter at that site in the right-hand door. Inside that room, we have some repeater equipment in racks. And on the top, we have the police repeater and the police duplexer, which is an antenna filtering component. And then below that, we have the fire duplexer and fire repeater in the bottom enclosure. The DPW repeater is at the top right rack, and the equipment below that is no longer in service. That's the old VHF low band for both police and fire. And just behind the rack, you can see the batteries on the floor. And those are there in case the AC power fails. It keeps the communications up and running while the generator cranks over and hopefully runs. This is a drone picture from the top of the tower showing the antennas at the monopine site, again on Coburn Road. So we can see the camouflage material on the tower, and we can see there are 5 antennas there. You've got the 2 antennas to the left are for the old low band radios. The 2 brown painted antennas in that photo are the police and fire antennas, and then the green antenna to the right hand side of the photo is the DPW antenna. And if you take a good look at that photo, you'll notice that none of those antennas are perfectly vertical, and that has to do with the way that they're installed presently. We're kind of at the beck and call of the cellular company that's paying for that spot on the tower. I do believe we have some adjustability in those mounts. We could replace them. However, the real solution here will be a little bit further along in this presentation. Changing sites real quick, we're over on Taylor Road. And Taylor Road, again, commercial tower site. We're in an outdoor cabinet. This cabinet is uninsulated, so there's no insulation on the walls. Not that it provides a whole lot of R value. as we're traditionally prepared to look at insulation in a house. But when you have wind blowing across the top of that hill, anything we can do to keep that equipment closer to, say, 50 degrees in the winter will greatly lengthen the amount of time you're able to run on those batteries. Because just like a car battery, the standby batteries do not like being cold. And I assure you that on the bottom of that cabinet in the middle of winter, it is pretty chilly. The radio repeater equipment, again, lays out just like the Coburn site. We've got a police duplexer, a police repeater, a fire duplexer, and a fire repeater. The duplexers in this particular site are a different manufacturer. That's why they're a different shape and size, but same function. And this is a drone shot from the top of that site. And again, we've got only 2 antennas at this site. We've got a police and a fire antenna. At the public safety building, we have some equipment. We still have the old dispatch console. When the dispatch room was staffed, this is where the dispatcher would sit and press buttons to talk to all of the town agencies and mutual aid agencies. At the top part of that panel, at the top right photo, is the alarm panel that at least alerts the dispatcher that there was a problem with the radio system. At 3 o'clock in the morning, we can see why that might be a problem now that that building is not staffed. But currently, that is the only indicator that there is a problem with one of the radio sites. The bottom photo on that site is the voter. The voter is kind of a central processor for each radio channel. Each of the 2 phone lines feed into that site. And actually, let me forward to the next diagram here, kind of paint a better picture. So at each site, we've got a set of phone lines. Again, in this scenario, we've got 2 phone lines at the Coburn site and 2 phone lines at the Taylor site. They feed back into Linden Road, the public safety complex, and go into the voter. The voter decides which site possesses the better audio quality and then sends that audio out to the transmitter. Both Coburn Road and Taylor Road have transmit capabilities. However, only one of them can be switched on at a single time. This is a manual process that needs to be done with touchstones and is not very user-friendly. So, again, this just kind of recaps what we just said. We've got 2 sites. They're 120 feet and 130 feet appropriately. They've got where the equipment's located and that they've got battery backup. We've also got the voting equipment and dispatch console and the alarm annunciation panel. Again, the repeaters show a 2002 build date, and they were purchased used, I believe, roughly 2007, 2008 time frame. The duplexer assembly shows a 2004 build date. Again, we know that the site was commissioned sometime after 2008, so I'm guessing that was purchased used as well. I don't know the history of them. There's 2 antennas on the top of the tower, and there are 2 leased Verizon circuits at each site. I just want to bring everybody up to speed. The repeater equipment that was shown is no longer supported by the manufacturer. That was discontinued in 2017. I can still get some parts for them, so we're not completely dead-ended, but it is a legacy product at this point. It still programs with Microsoft DOS. If you're familiar at all with history of computers, it's challenging to find something slow enough and old enough to program that with. We have to keep an old laptop around just for that purpose. We're still dependent upon telephone lines. Verizon has been issuing notices that they're going to not support those phone lines anymore. We still have a number of systems that use them. However, last year we received notices in Leominster that they were disconnecting the lines, and they gave us 90 days to vacate the circuit, which left us 90 days to figure out how to make the radio system work without phone lines. I just want you to be aware that that's a separate issue. I know that you're working on a fiber project separate from this discussion, and that will fix this issue. But just to bring it up in this meeting, the phone line issue is a legacy issue as well. And because they're not maintaining those lines correctly, we do have some audio artifacts that show up that can cause misvoting. In other words, you might be a mile away from Taylor Road, but it still picks Coburn, even though it has a worse signal, because not all of the high frequency audio is making it back to the voter. That's where the noise component is in a radio system. I think we've all heard static in a radio transmission before. That's what the voter's listening for. When we have a bad phone line, those high frequencies are attenuated. It sounds very muffled. I think we've all experienced that talking on a phone, at least in the day before everything was IP phones and cellular phones. But that phenomenon is not uncommon, and it causes tremendous issues with the radio system that we have at present. Just want to bring that up and put it out there for everybody's consideration. We have tried some workarounds for when these phone lines do fail, and unfortunately that means that somebody needs to stop all the communications on the channel, enter in a series of codes to turn on or off the different repeaters in different modes. It is possible, because there are no interlocks between the system, to accidentally turn on both of them, which would cause a complete loss of communications, because the type of equipment that we're working with isn't capable of simultaneous transmission. Again, it's a workaround, it's not a solution, so to speak. We know that the radio system has failed for extended periods in the past, and this presents a bigger problem when you don't have somebody physically in the building to see the indicator go off, showing that there's been a failure in the middle of the night. Unfortunately, again, we are kind of stuck at this legacy issue at this point. The DPW repeater itself had failed just prior to COVID, really. I loaned them some equipment. That somehow got lumped into this town-wide project. I've loaned them the equipment, and we haven't billed them anything for it. It just keeps getting pushed into this town-wide project. So I've included that here with this this proposal. But just understand that that already failed to the point where we couldn't repair it, and I've loaned them some equipment to get them on the air. And then obviously with the interruptions of COVID, we haven't really had any meetings furthering about it. But beyond that, we know that the antenna gel coat on the antennas at both sites have started to take on water. We can see that through the gel coat. Gel coat's the same thing you'd find on the bottom of a fiberglass boat. It's a glossy coating that's designed to keep the water out. UV light is our perpetual degradation method in these types of radio systems. Usually eats away that fiberglass coating, and then the antenna becomes porous, absorbs water, and everything inside of it is copper. Copper and water is bad. Copper and water with electric, basically acting as an antenna as an electric circuit. Eventually the bottom of the antenna fills up with water, shorts to ground, and then the antenna just completely fails. We know that the DPW failed. Again, we just talked about that. We know that the police antennas and fire antennas are taking on water by their measurements. We've also measured some increased site noise at each site. That is not uncommon with as many cellular operators as we have present today. But we also know that the newer technology has been rolled out, and with that technology comes more transmitters and more noise. We do see some reduced range due to that noise, and we can fix that. The batteries at all of these sites are running with a 2007 date code. Those batteries have a 3 to 5 year shelf life per the manufacturer's spec on that exact battery. The batteries themselves off gas, hydrogen gas, and that acidic gas actually etches some of the nickel plating in the repeaters, and that oxidization is causing some crackling and conductivity issues in the back plane. We've done what we can with a commercial product called Deoxit to take off that oxidization layer, and the crackling has gotten better. But once it's been damaged, it's very difficult to repair. We know that the HVAC system that was in use at the Coburn site is no longer in use. The equipment that's in that shelter is actually rated to be mounted at the top of the tower, and the cellular companies know that it's outdoor rated, so they don't even run any HVAC controls on it. It doesn't need to be air conditioned because it's outdoor rated. So our equipment is basically left there to suffer. You know, if I had to make a recommendation as part of this upgrade to prolong the life of the new equipment, would be to put a small heat pump in, known as a mini split. And at the Taylor site, I would put a similar shelter to what's there that has the insulation built in, and it has a small heating, ventilation, and cooling unit on it. That would at least keep the equipment in its desired operating range. And the bottom of that enclosure has a separate space for the batteries so that there wouldn't be any gaseous exposure like we had now, even if the batteries did fail. So we know that both sites are suffering several conditions affecting its full usability. We have the site noise that's making receivers at each one of those sites strain to hear the users. We know that the current antennas are ineffective, and we know that the filtering equipment is no longer effective due to the noise at the site, and also because when more than one transmitter keys up and puts in fire talk at the same time, both systems basically receive poorly for the duration of the time that both people are trying to talk on them. This is a bigger problem because obviously police and fire operate at the same scene. You know, you have a car accident in the center of town. Police are there, fire are there. They're doing different jobs, but you know, fire's trying to request a second ambulance, and police are running the license plates of both vehicles at the same time. Basically, the entire system goes to garbage. They hear a lot of noise, a lot of crackling. Sometimes the words cut out, depending upon where they are in town. You know, it's not good. The solution to that's multifaceted. We purchase a multi-coupler that's been designed for the frequencies that are in use by, you know, police, fire, or fire/EMS, and DPW. Put them all in a common set of antennas. That common set of antennas would be capable of supporting future additions on a regional overlay, or, you know, again, down the road, the town wants to license another frequency for use. You can simply add to that existing combiner without having to climb the tower, change anything with the antennas up on the tower. It's all done on the ground. We would use a new set of common antennas and new feed lines. And again, those antennas would be spaced vertically, so they'd be on the same mast. You'd have a lower set of antennas and an upper set of antennas, and that gives you the best isolation between both of those antennas. You know, again, this would follow all the best engineering practices. So we know that the system was not fully engineered. Again, at this point, we have the opportunity to leverage current engineering best practices, put the correct equipment in, put the correct filtering in. We know that we're going to be well set for the future at each one of these sites, both in the ability to expand and resolve all the existing noise issues. So we happened to go out on site a while back, and this is the Taylor site inside the top of the cabinet. And at the top right of that photo, you can see the power wires coming in with the little fuse holder, and that little black box up next to the right-hand fan is a thermostat. So, you know, they are thermostatically controlled fans, but both of them have failed catastrophically, and one basically flew apart, and that one on the left, you can see the copper coil for the center of the brushless fan, and the other one's just kind of dangling there. But you can also see on on the cabling harness there, how all those colors, the color of the cabling is kind of a, I don't even know what color that would be. Brown? We'll go with brown. And that's due to acid etching, or acid gases etching the outside of that cable. That's actually a bright silver color when they're not etched. So again, when we look at the cabinet that I would recommend we place there, the bottom part, illustrated here at number 6, is the 2 shelves for the batteries. And that area is gasketed and entirely separate from the main heated, cooled portion up the top where the radio equipment would go. And it's actually got a separate louvered vent, front and rear, and fans on the rear, just so that those gases can be exhausted. So, we can predict what coverage looks like, and we can calibrate that coverage based on known values. So we've taken published standards, TIA, TSB 88 is the known public safety standard for measuring noise and basically interference in two-way radio systems. So we can basically predict what the coverage should be, go out and sample that coverage with known values and calibrate our maps. And we've done that at both of these sites, just to show a before and a predicted after using similar sites from neighboring communities. So before we really get into how we predict coverage, we got to understand how the coverage map works. The coverage map works by deducting what it thinks the current use of the land is, because trees are very easy to predict as far as losses go. When we start adding buildings in the middle, it gets very difficult. So we can see here kind of what the town makeup is as far as where it thinks there's agricultural, transportation, there's not a whole lot of open land. But, what we really care about is where the residential is concentrated, and then where any commercial, industrial would be, and any high-density urban. We don't have any high-density urban showing on this map, but we do have the commercial industrial areas showing. And again, this is 2017 data that comes out of the U.S. Geological Survey, so it isn't the very latest. And we know there's been some developments that aren't shown on this map. But the second piece we need to know is what the topography looks like. So we have a topographical map. This relief basically kind of gives us an idea where the highest spots in town are, where the lowest spots in town are. And, again, radio waves are a line of sight technology. We need to know where we can get to from the Coburn site and the Taylor site, and then what kind of terrain might be in the way. So that's where we can come up with this map. This is the outdoor coverage. So this is a portable radio on either police or fire channel. Both have a similar impairment. And really, right now, we've got about 50% of town that we can say we have good coverage in. We prefer to get that number as close as we can to 95%. That's almost unobtainable. There's no such thing as 100% coverage. But there comes a point where adding sites becomes very expensive, and we know that, again, we're never going to achieve 100% perfection. So engineering, in my shoes, is really coming up with ways to make the coverage as optimal as we can with the fewest number of sites possible. Basically, the simplest machine wins. This site currently, again, we're looking at 50.1% coverage good and 78% coverage fair. That means there's some static, there's some noise, but for the most part, you can get a message through and, everybody can understand what's going on. Below that is everything in gray, which is the coverage, it's basically below our coverage threshold. And that's minus 95 dBm for public safety installations. Okay. we can look at what fixing the antennas themselves would yield. And I'm just going to toggle back and forth so we can see that. And again, the good goes up. The good goes up by 18.3%. The orange goes up by 11.1%. Hopefully that's coming across okay. But we do start to gain the coverage back that everybody has told us has gone away. And that's good. We know that we have issues in areas now that this would fix. If we get a good filter network on there, we're able to take out the noise and let the receivers hear down to their thermal noise floor. We're able to get that coverage up into 80.6. So that's a 30.5% improvement over the original measurement, which looks like this, and 12.2% over just fixing the antennas as far as the green area. And then, again, the orange area, we're at 18.2% over the original impairment and 7% roughly over fixing the antennas. So we can make everything work much better as far as portable radios with just fixing the filtering and antenna issue. The antennas provide the biggest impact because even new filters on the old antennas will not get us to where we need to go. We know that there's classically been areas of towns that have problems, and that's been back to the old low band days. We know that we can provide a big improvement, and we know that the town's still growing. So with those two factors in mind, we tried looking at a third site. We looked at a couple options. One is down behind the New England Sports Center, and the other one is over basically behind the sewage treatment plant in Marlboro, off Boundary Road. Both of them are in the southern part of town that we're having issues in. Basically, one of them is too far from the desired coverage area. The other one's much closer, but there's no space available above 70 feet off ground. And at that height, we had some other options. Homewood Suites has been open about having a discussion about putting a site there, which would basically be a small 20-foot ballasted tower on the roof. There would be an outdoor cabinet similar to the one I'm talking about proposing for the Taylor Road site. Place that on the roof as well. Some things to consider on a site like that. We still require an operating agreement. We require rights of way for any fiber that might feed that site, and whatever access arrangements you plan on having need to be deeded into that building. Currently, the building does not have a lightning anode ground system because there's nothing on the roof that's a lightning hazard. So we need to, basically, I'm sure you've seen in passing tiny little spikes up on the roof, on the corners of buildings and at the high points. We need to basically commission a system like that. That has a significant cost, especially with copper being what it's worth today. Again, this is an additional consideration to just radio equipment. We'd still need backup power outside of the battery. That might be a little bit difficult to implement. Even if we did a generator plug where you could drive up to the building and put a portable generator in place, you're talking about an occupied building, then having enough distance from any air intakes, being in an open area to make sure that we're not going to have any CO issues. Again, consideration, whether that's a permanent mounted generator or a portable generator. We've got to get cables up to the roof. That becomes the electrician's problem, not mine, fortunately, but it's something to be aware of. And then we still need to get fiber up there. Fiber would be the only way we can get connectivity to a site like that. We know that it's several miles of road, but we'd also need to probably either run it overhead or trench cut the driveway and bring fiber into the building. And we still need an electrician to bring the power into the roof area for our cabinet.
About 2 weeks.
There's significant scope to fully define all of those costs. You know, we'd have to really know this is where we're placing the cabinet, this is where we have permission to be. And we'd also have to make sure that the roof can support the snow load, plus all the ballast loading for that tower. Might have to get into some structural engineering as well. I don't know what the what the structure was rated for, or it's going to take the full 1,600 pounds of ballast to hold up a tower like that. So, again, these are additional costs that we would face exploring a site like that.
You're talking $1 million.
Another option is the community garden, which is not far away. The option I would recommend there that has the least visual impact would be a baseball stadium style lamp mast. The company that actually makes baseball stadium lighting manufactures these telecom masts as a low-cost tower. We put a small outdoor cabinet on that same tower. There's a small attachment that goes on the bottom that the cabinet actually sits on, just to keep it out of the snow. And that saves us from having to pour a concrete pad. From that site, we can achieve microwave backhaul. So microwave is a type of radio technology where we can beam data signals back and forth between the two sites. So that is a big deal, because we can not have to deploy fiber. We can get a wireless connection to the site, and we can provide a backup connection between Coburn and Taylor should that fiber that's being placed fail for some reason. I have been a radio technician through the ice storm of '08. I know all about telephone lines and fiber lines that have been on the ground before. So, when the restoration might be a week plus, being able to operate through that microwave network can be a really nice benefit. And again, that microwave connection can support additional resources. So if we wanted to support monitoring that site with additional cameras, we can backhaul all that to the police station, no problem. And right now, those towers I'm actually using in a similar project. They're showing 8 to 10 weeks lead time. And, again, it's going to require some civil work. We need to dig the hole that the monopole is going to go into. We could work with the DPW on that. Same for getting power over to that site, would be fed underground, so the trenching work can be done by Public Works. The heights listed here achieve the coverage both in microwave and radio coverage. So we can kind of show you some coverage maps to show what the little bit of difference in height gets us for radio coverage compared to the rooftop site at Homewood Suites. And then we'll bring in the community garden site. I'll get that a couple slides ahead here. But again, I think having redundancy in a point-to-point microwave system would help me sleep better at night, and again, should help you sleep better at night. Oh, here we go. So, Homewood Suites, again, going roughly 65 feet off of the building, 65 feet above ground level, that is, for the antenna center line. We get 7.5% of town has good coverage. And the orange area would get us roughly 20%. We expect that to be in the southern portion of town. We're fighting the terrain going back up into town. Versus the 120-foot pole, which would get us, conversely, it's 26% of town with good coverage, 57% of town with fair coverage. So I think we'll just toggle back and forth and look at those real quick. I think there's a significant benefit to really having that site, if only for the microwave backhaul. But again, if you're spending $1 on a site, I'd rather see you get the maximum amount of coverage than to go from 7% to 26%, almost 27%. You get 20% more coverage for every dollar you'd spend performing that type of work. And just to show what 3-site portable radio coverage looks like, assuming we fix the other 2 sites, we get the good coverage up to 85.2%, and the fair coverage goes up to 98.6%. Again, as I said previously, there's going to be dead spots no matter which way we do it. That's physics. Again, the gray areas where we're below thresholds, we got to look at the areas where those thresholds exist. There aren't a whole lot of them that are in populated areas. We looked at the streets. None of these areas lay in a residential area, and they're primarily out in the woodland. I don't think you'd experience any on the street, personally. So again, we're looking at the coverage impact of the current coverage versus what we're proposing as a fix. Just to toggle those back and forth a few times. So the new system design would be a ring where we wouldn't have a single point of failure. We're going to have fiber between the two primary sites, Coburg and Taylor, and this garden site, which I think is the better of the two options, would give us the benefit of microwave. And that microwave can work, basically with any single point of failure. So if you lost a microwave link, you've still got fiber to back that up. Conversely, if we lose the fiber, which is frankly the more likely scenario, we'd be able to run on the microwave network alone. I prefer having all three because it gives you no single point of failure, and we'd have the benefit of being able to be truly fully redundant. So if we break out the what I call the Lego block diagram of what each site would consist of, we're going to have a police repeater, a fire repeater, a DPW repeater. We got all the networking equipment, and then DC power and backup. So all of these sites are able to run on DC power, basically battery power, and that's what they primarily run on. The AC power is basically just there to keep the batteries fully charged at all times. The police, fire, and DPW repeaters are at all three sites, meaning all three of them cover equally well. This gives you the benefit of using the DPW channel on off-season uses for a tactical communications channel. You have town events going on. You don't want to clog up the police or fire repeaters. You do have a third option. Again, they're probably more than happy to let you use it. I think it's a smarter way to use the existing equipment while we're building this system out. On the left-hand side of each site, you see the combiner filter system. That's the part that would be designed to accommodate all three of those channels or any additional channels that we plan on adding in the future. The platform we chose for this network would be a Tate 9400 simulcast. The benefit of this is that it's capable of further expansion if we want to go with a regional system. All of those components are capable of going into that system. The benefit of this is that it's an IP native device, meaning there's no adapters, voter hardware, multiplexers. It's got an Ethernet jack on the back of it. We plug it in, and it'll operate. It does everything we need it to do today, and in the future, it's equipped and ready for P25 operation, which is digital. That's actually a mass procurement best practices for the state.
Is this American-made equipment?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Is equipment made in America or is Chinese?
So this equipment is made in New Zealand.
New Zealand.
Unfortunately, I would love to sell an American-made base station. There's nobody making equipment here.
Huh.
I wish they would.
That's weird.
That's been a sore spot for a long time. But the base stations are made in New Zealand.
Okay.
And they're a fourth generation base station. Their predecessors have been out literally since 1966, and we're only in the fourth iteration. So they run for a long time.
Okay.
But they're a very rugged, reliable design, and they support all of the industry standards and all of the APCO standards. So what that means for us is that we're not picking something proprietary. It meets all of the industry standards for digital operation into the future. So there's been a bigger push nationwide to transition everybody to digital. There's some people that love it. There's some people that hate it. The bottom line is, if we're spending funds, it has to be capable. This device is capable and equipped to operate in digital. Whether we decide to do that today, on day one, or 5 years down the road, there's no additional anything to buy. It's already in the box. We just program the radio equipment and use it. So again, that's just me. I prefer to see that going forward. Again, there's no additional boxes there to fail or rely on. It's literally all done in the base station. There are actually software keys that are turned on and off in the base station, just like you register Windows. You type in a key, and it turns the function on. There are some functions in that base station that we're using yet, and that's okay. It gives us room to grow. But again, it creates a stable platform for us that doesn't have a single point of failure.
What is the
Again, getting back to the power
maintenance?
at each one of these radio sites,
That's a good question.
we have lithium polymer batteries. They're a much higher energy density than lead. It needs only to be in a thermally, stable thermal environment. Basically, we know batteries don't get very happy when they're 1,000,000 degrees, and we know that lead acid or lithium ion batteries don't do very well in the cold. They will operate in the cold just fine. You can discharge them down to 100%. They will not take a charge until they're above 40 degrees, which is why we need to have environmental controls, at least on the cabinets. Again, we're going to manage the IP network. So we're going to be looking at quality of service parameters in an IP network, basically ensure that voice receives the highest priority. And again, that just ensures that if we're backhauling video or if we're backhauling additional payloads, we can be assured that the voice network will always have the highest priority in the IP network. It also allows us to provide an interconnection with other district operations. So again, I know there's been some discussion about district-wide communications. This can partake in that district-wide communications by means of being on that IP network. So we're going to have our local communications, and then we'll have the regional overlay on top of that. And again, all of that traffic is managed through these IP routers.
Okay.
And then obviously we already kind of talked about this, but the filtering network is the combiner and multi-coupler antenna system. These are industry best practices for public safety sites. They didn't exist when these sites were built, and I don't fault any of the previous generation of folks that put all this work into it. They did an excellent job. It's just as technology and frequency congestion moves forward and we start building regional sites, the ability to add additional channels down the road as the regional facility expands is a need, and it prevents us from having to go back and redesign everything that's attached to the tower from the ground up every time we want to add a channel, versus adding additional base stations to a shelter. Maybe you need to put a bigger cabinet at the site, but we don't need to go up the tower any longer. We can use the existing feed lines, and they're common to the system. So I know that separate from this, there's been a discussion about a fiber optic project. I quoted separately the equipment required to route that project, and I know that was scheduled for Q3, Q4 of this year as far as the project taking place. Separate from this, I provided a quote for antenna replacement, and that's going to replace the antenna and feed lines at both sites with basically the type required to achieve the illustrated goals we just showed in those coverage maps. Again, we can connect these antennas today to the current equipment and see an improvement. Currently, actually, I'm going to update that slide. We just ordered the same antennas today, and it's 4 months currently. And the cabling that goes up the tower is about 4 months. So that is still correct. Just to put it out there as far as where we're at supply chain wide. As far as site mitigation goes, we can work on solution in Coburn anytime. I can tell you that the nearly 20-year-old equipment that's out there would love to be in air conditioning as opposed to roasting in the sun. We'll just check with Sprint before we do anything, because I don't want to trigger any alarms on their equipment if we were to make that kind of upgrade. The cabinet at Taylor can be replaced at any time. Again, it's just a matter of, do we want to stack all the old hardware in that cabinet, or do we want to put just the brand new equipment in there, bolt the cabinet down, and just do it once? But does it make sense to do it twice? I don't know. I don't know what the timeline the municipality has on doing any of this work. I'm just bringing this up as a point. Combiner and multi-coupler and antenna system can be entered. Literally, we can put that in any time after the new antenna is installed and operational. The separation between the transmit and receive antenna being vertical is a requirement for the for the combined operation. We need to actually separate the transmit and receive antennas vertically. The horizontal isolation is seldom practiced these days in a combined system, and you need almost 10 times the distance horizontally as you would vertically. And unfortunately, I don't have hundreds of feet to work with at the top of that tower. So getting that antenna system in there would be the next step. And again, that's going to be whether we do this or a regional system. It's going to be that same antenna configuration. That garden site with a pole, we're at 6 to 8 weeks current lead time for the manufacturer. That ships from Iowa. Obviously that's ground freight.
Excuse me, question.
We need to dive into that a little bit more with reviewing what we'd have to do at that site.
Anyway.
But
Lee, can I interrupt you for a moment?
Sure.
Okay, we have a question.
I have a question. So the garden site, you're mentioning the garden site. Well, the town actually has a lease for that garden site. We lease that land, and it's got restricted uses. So I don't know whether or not that would even be a possibility. So I'm a little concerned about using that site. Did you also look at the River Run site that the town might have an opportunity to purchase?
I didn't. I wasn't even aware of it. But that's one of the reasons why we're having this meeting, is to go over theoreticals.
Oh, okay.
I'd be glad to look at it.
Where's River Run?
Again, this garden site popped up because it was close to
That's that. Where Boundless Adventures
largely
is.
like the Homewood Suites area, and we just again ran it as a theoretical. If we put this here, do we have line of sight to Taylor? Do we have line of sight to Coburn? What kind of connectivity can we get there? I'd be glad to look at that. What was the name of the plot that you'd like me to look at?
It's River Run. It's lot 6B. I think I could give the chiefs a parcel map that shows the site.
Perfect. Actually, with just lot 6B, I could probably find it. I was on the GIS site the other day looking at other options. I don't know. I mean, probably put 15 different push pins down in different spots, looking at things. But that either I did look at it or I didn't. But I don't think I've looked at that if it's close to this garden site. So
Lee,
I'll certainly look at that.
Lee, we have one more, I think, question. Peg Stone. I don't know how to get her to be able to talk, but she has a question. Hold on, let me see if I can.
I'm unmuted, Anna. Can you hear me?
There you go. Okay, go ahead, Peg.
So, thanks, Anna. Lee, several slides ago, you had talked about specifics on failures. So I would like to ask both chiefs for the specific number of failures caused by the current system versus the total number of calls that have been successful, and those that have failed, what have been the consequences?
It would be me. That's,
Why do you want
if
me to go
it
first?
fails, that's the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Chief. All right, so when we talk about failures, fortunately, we haven't had a catastrophic failure where anybody's lost their life or been seriously injured. As far as failures go, they are daily. Daily meaning asking dispatch to repeat where we're going, location where we're going, where's that medical call, we couldn't hear it. There's so much back noise in our radio system now that I'd say probably 90% of our calls are distorted. And if it wasn't for apps on our phone, we would probably have to ask a third time, but usually it comes up on our app where the location is or a mobile data terminal. Like I said, fortunately, we haven't had any catastrophic failures, but obviously we don't want to have those. That's why we're here tonight.
Thank you, Eric, for that. So it doesn't, again, I was trying to look for percentage. I mean, unfortunately, the picture that's being painted to me, and I apologize if it comes across as rather crass, but it almost sounds like the sky is falling, the sky is falling. So I'm trying to get an idea of where we are with the current communication. What are the options that can be done? A couple, maybe a month or so ago, you came back and asked for 44,000. Now it's well over 800,000. You know, I'm not saying that this is not an important project. It absolutely is. The safety of the residents of the town is you know at the top. But I'd almost like to see a non-vendor, if possible, and I don't know if it is, a non-vendor engineer come in and actually do, you know, give us an assessment of where we are and what needs to be done.
Okay, the difference in the price here is adding a tower on the south side of town. The original phases that Chief Clark and I came up with was replacing existing equipment, which is around the $400,000 mark. But adding that extra tower on the south side of town is where you're seeing a large increase in the budget or in the proposed plan for this project. It wasn't on our radar to begin with, but you know, we were asked to, you know, obviously look at our radio systems even further, and this is what has come out of it.
I can address that.
So are there other, and I apologize for like monopolying. I'll ask one more question and then I'll stop. Eric, what other vendors are you talking to besides this one? And what are other towns around us doing or done to their equipment to get it up to a satisfactory state and not buying the gold version of this?
Yo.
Oh, I think he's dead.
Uh-oh.
They
Did we
lost
lose
him.
him?
He's muted.
Oh, he's muted.
Oh, no, I'm back now. Sorry, sorry, it was just a great play. Sorry. Boylston 2 weeks ago just approved $2 million for a similar project. So I understand it looks like a gold project, 830. Our neighboring town just appropriated $2 million for the same UHF radio system that we're going for. I've talked with Beltronics that has a similar package, but not a third site, and also Cybercom, Chief Clark is in contact with, that has a 2-site system, not a 3-site system. This is a 3-site system to get the best coverage for the town. There's a lot of emphasis in the last meeting that the money from Rockwell had to go to the south side of town, so we included the south side of town to show how much higher it goes.
Okay. Eloise, did you have a question, statement?
Peggy, the reason why I asked that we have a third tower is because the Rockwell did provide 300,000 and they weren't getting any benefit. And you've got the big buildup at South Berlin, but you're now getting buildup in the outer fringes of Berlin because that's where the land is and they're building houses. It's not going away.
Okay.
Okay, one more thing, the 830,000, on top of it, we have antennas and fiber channels, so it's gonna be a lot more money.
I think the 830 included the first 300, but my guess is Lee's going to address that. Oh wait, Fire Chief Clark, go ahead. I'll lower your hand.
For my answer with one of Peg's questions about the coverage. Not an incident goes by that we don't lose coverage out of the street at least 1 or 2 times. We have to ask them to repeat messages and multiple times during a single incident. So the fire department is what, 600 to 800 incidents a year, times every time you go out, we have to ask them to redo that. Our original plan, we have feeling, and I think it was clear, but by the early shots that we got, covered most of the town. And people with much more experience in the town of Berlin than I have said that when they put the radio system in, it worked sufficiently. Okay, it was okay and good. It was safe, efficient, and effective. It's a good way to say it. Okay, and what we tried to do in our original plan was to take the existing system and just modernize it, replace which we know we have problems with for maintenance, the copper wire with fiber, replace the existing repeaters and associated equipment, which includes the antennas, which Lee has been talking about, and then evaluate what we got. Do we still have weaknesses sometimes, or is someone like, after we do that, is someone like Lee gonna tell us, hey chiefs, you got this percentage coverage everywhere that you are, we can make it a little bit better, but it does the better, does the money that we spend to make it better worth the small amount that we're gonna gain? So it's like, that's where we started, was simple. We talked with some vendors, multiple vendors early, and we said, let's redo the existing and then evaluate it for a while, field evaluate it. What are the guys doing when the Chiefs blue team is out, my red team guys are out?
They haven't
Is
addressed
there
the fiber.
an improvement, or do we still have to build after that? And it's like, and that's where we were. And then Lee came in, evaluated the whole system. Great evaluation. You know what I mean? I like what he's bringing here to us. You know, but again, it's quite a jump over what we originally talked about and planned for. But it's,
Can I see here?
Lee's professional safety personnel, so we're all so it's kind of like the scope of the work has grown a lot since the beginning. So it's like kind of sitting back and like listening to Lee's stuff in my developing radio systems as a user, not as the background that Lee's got in.
I just don't think it's wise to keep piecemealing it.
Very good,
If
Lee.
the
Thank
town
you
was
for your
gonna pay for
great
the
presentation. I know you're not
majority of
finished.
this, I'd go
But,
with what they
This
present.
is just something that we need to do
So we've got 300.
to make improvements to make the
Maybe the
safety
board could be convinced to use
high.
300,000 from ARPA funds.
So that's where I sit.
But I'm telling you, I really do
I
think
take this all in. I
that they
can
need
see
to
what
push
everyone's.
state 911.
It's a lot of money anyway you cut it.
State
But
911
it's like
gives money for these things.
we have to evaluate all this and
It
make the best
closed
decision.
2 weeks before.
Was that the
That's all
state
you have to say. Thank you.
911 grant or the funding, or was that a different source?
No.
Thank you, Chief Clark.
911.
Lee,
As
do
I
you
said.
have any final details?
No, so I mean, really, that, you know, I understand both of the points that were brought up. I understand. I will try to dig up. At one point, there was an engineering study done by the Regional Dispatch Center. I want to say 2017, 2018 timeline by an independent engineering company, and they looked at the regionalization of the existing assets.
Yes, but you will not be here.
So that study has already been done. We're just basically leveraging some of those
Well, they have to hear
discoveries.
these things.
Again, if I could tell you that magically, you know, we could go on a tower that somebody else has already developed and it would save you money, I would love to do that. But I should be able to dig up a copy of that presentation for you, just to review all of your existing assets. But one of the things that came up, you know, in this
Yeah, but they
presentation
use
is
that
exactly
for payroll and
the kind of
expenses and-
stipulation that was thrown at me. Is, you know, I know there's strings on that whatever it ends up being, $300,000 as to where it can be spent for coverage. I don't know what those specifics are or aren't. Again, I'm sticking to the radio engineering side, but just to talk about some of the cost scope side of the project, again, can I deploy you a base station without backup capabilities, without maybe, we take out the DPW site at the other two sites. These are all options that are on the table.
I think DPW needs
But if you're going
to
to build this once, are you going to want to revisit it again in the next capital year? Is it something you're committed to, just doing the rest of the spend on it? And again, those are questions that are theoretical and to the future. I can only speak on behalf of some of the customers that I have that started building out systems, and I understand it's capital planning, and it's looking at things by fiscal year and going, okay, we're going to do this spend today, and in 2 years from now, we're going to do another spend and fix this once and for all. And in the middle, you've got other expenses you've got to anticipate. I 100% understand that. And, again, I look at this basically with what are the strings tied to the southern portion of town? If we can clarify what that is or isn't. And if we really want to try to simplify the system, we can simplify it to the extent possible. So,
what are the yearly maintenance fees on the equipment and software?
On a system of this complexity, would be somewhere in the $6,000 or $8,000 a year, and that's 24 hours service contract to come out and field replace anything that needs to be replaced. Something breaks, we're going to be there to fix it. But that also covers all the software upgrades to each one of the base stations and checking on all of the components once a year. I think some of the reason we've run into some of the problems we have, and I'll bring back the battery scenario, they were placed into service and they've never been changed. I find it hard to believe that, and again, I didn't maintain the system, but I find it hard to believe that somebody that's maintaining a system doesn't do a basic discharge test on a battery that's maintaining a public safety entity. If there's anything I learned in the ice storm of '08, it's that, battery is great for a short duration event. And most of our power grid interruptions in New England using the ISO standards are less than 4 hours. And that's great. But if you take a site like, I'm just going to use Taylor for an example, there's no other houses or anything else down there for that power to really run to. And I don't know how well that road even gets cleared in the winter. So, if we do have a pole down scenario on Taylor Road, I'm expecting that to be a longer duration event before the power company gets down there to fix it. Even if we register that asset as a critical infrastructure component, it's going to take them some time to get down there and work on that. Currently, the site just goes offline and it goes into failure, and we lose coverage in that portion of town. So, to that end, I understand. I understand the cost factor, and again, we can work within a budget. The question comes down to what are the critical sites and what are the critical failure points we want to address in this phase of the project, and what do we want to push off to the next phase of the project when and if that time comes. These don't all need to be in the first phase of the project. However, I would suggest at least a decent battery at each site, a common battery, a common supply system that can be monitored, and 2 new base stations, police and fire base station. And then we could possibly repurpose, if we could get the parts to work, repurpose one of the Coburn repeaters to be the DPW repeater by retuning it. Would save you some money there, and we'd also have a bunch of spare parts for it. I know it's the Band-Aid fix, but it's a way to save some money with parts you already own. I'm just offering it as a solution for you.
Would you have a guesstimate of expense for that sort of bare bones basic solution? And would you include replacing the antennas with that bare bones?
The antennas I would do tomorrow if it were my money in my pocket, those handicap, basically those antennas, the antenna situation you're in is handicapping your system immediately.
Oh, there you go.
And
There you go.
remedying that situation will get you much more range and much more reliable communication
Anna, what's that estimate?
with the existing equipment.
I'm waiting.
So that would be step number one in my book. I would do that today, and knowing lead times on repeater equipment, that we're looking 14 to 16 weeks if I order the base stations today. It's not like it's just on the shelf and somebody can go pick it up, but we get so used to the Amazon world, unfortunately, it just doesn't work that way. The company that manufactures it, basically, their green policy is that they're not going to manufacture anything until there's an order for it. And I respect that. It's just one of those things where they don't necessarily, have 4 of them sitting on the shelf for me to go pick up tomorrow. So with that in mind, with the lead time on the base stations, that would be the next component. And then the filtering. Those are the big 3 that really are holding you back. My concern is that if I walk in the door, bolt in a new base station, and we plug it into the existing AC wall outlet, I don't have any backup power in the few seconds it takes for the generator to kick on. At the Taylor site, I don't even have a generator. So currently that site, stays running for about 3 minutes before the battery completely falls flat on its face, and then it's just offline. So if we had to skip a site to do, DC power plant, I would probably say the Taylor site would be the one that needs it most. Both sites are going to need it because we do have access to a generator at at Coburn. And again, we just need to bridge that gap between when the power fails and the generator starts. Unfortunately, just like any other computer-based product, if the power goes out and the base station resets, it takes a minute for it to boot back up. And everybody's trying to key up the radio in the meantime, probably dealing with why the wires are down, or the call's trying to be dispatched, and that's not really the time we want to have any interruption in service. It's worth saying that all of the new IP-based equipment is monitorable, so we'll know that something is going on at the site to the power system, that the generator is running, long before the power runs out of that battery. So we can actually mobilize resources to deal with these situations, hopefully long ahead of actually needing to worry about it. But again, we're trying to be realistic. 12-hour battery backup sounds great at the start of an incident in the middle of a snowstorm. It gives you some time to actually run and complete the, typically the beginning of a snowstorm as a firefighter. I'm sure the chiefs will agree that, cars going off the road, that sort of thing, picks up, then it climaxes, and from there it just kind of falls off. Everybody's made it home, the storm winds down, or the DPW gets caught up, all 3 of this the same. Once the roads are treated, everything kind of holds steady. And as long as we can avoid having to deploy emergency responder resources to go tend to bringing a generator to a site or any of that in the middle of this, that's really what the battery is there to hold you over. If the generator doesn't start, or if the generator is low on fuel, doesn't start, that sort of thing, you can actually intervene in that battery runtime. We can add batteries down the road. They're not necessarily needed, except at one site, whichever site we're going to make the primary site. As long as we can keep, say, Coburn on the air, we could lose Taylor Road. When the power comes back, it'll come back on the network. I don't recommend building networks like that, but we can.
Can we, I see first, Janet, I see that your hand is up. I want to just circle back to cost for that basic bare bones sort of plan that you were talking about. And then Janet here in our group has a quick question.
Sure. So, it's hard for me to just put my thumb on a number.
Yep.
I could get back to you with a number, but if I had to guesstimate, would be somewhere between 400 and, again, depending upon which options we pick, we could be close to $500,000. Again, depending upon which checkboxes we uncheck. If we do away, we say, okay, DPWs doesn't need to be at each one of these sites. We're taking out many base stations, and they're not inexpensive. So it's very easy to see that we'd be, say, $100,000 lower by removing DPW from the rest of the sites. Just as an
Well,
example.
they had the library in the 1870s.
Okay, Janet, go ahead.
No, mine's just a quick question, and maybe I didn't hear it at the beginning, but if we're using ARPA funds, do we not need 3 bids? It just seems like we're spending a lot of money, and I just didn't know if that was something we needed.
Yes.
That's a typical question.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, we definitely need 3 bids.
No matter what funding source.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's all I want to know.
Okay. Margaret, you had it.
Okay, so you mentioned that the top ranked priorities in order would be repair antennas, then repair base stations or do something with base stations, and then address the filter components.
Yeah.
Correct.
Any sense, any estimate? You said you would tackle the antennas in the next couple of weeks. So for some sort of improvement, how much would that cost, roughly?
So the antennas, basically ordering the antennas, the stuff that I would do immediately,
Repairing.
as far as replacing the antennas and feed lines, be $32,000.
Okay.
32,552.13.
32, fine. That's pretty specific.
32,000.
Yeah.
If I want to go ahead, yes. We've actually already provided that number, and again, that covers both sites, but it gets us right where we need to be to do any of these other improvements.
There you go.
That's just the antennas, or it's antenna electronics that comes with it?
So that's going to be removing the existing antennas, replacing all the antennas and the feed lines for those antennas at both sites.
Okay, but not the repeaters,
Not
the
the
base
repeaters,
stations.
Correct. So
Yeah.
basically, it's just the cabling that comes into the shelter. It's a 7/8 inch diameter corrugated copper cable.
Okay.
And again, copper is very expensive right now, but at roughly $5 a foot, to give you an idea on where that's at, these 120-foot towers plus 30, 40 feet to get into a building, it's not inexpensive to do this. And of course, it needs to be a continuous run with, they've got connectors on each end. The connectors aren't inexpensive either.
What's
They
actually
gold-plated.
replacing the batteries? Is that the
But
Base stations.
base station?
You want to ask that one?
the antenna situation is obviously one I would want to address immediately, because it will provide some of that improvement on your existing infrastructure.
Right.
One of the big
Well,
holdbacks
just
on your
gives you some
existing
time.
infrastructure is that we can only transmit from a single site at a time, so we can only get coverage from that single site at a time. We can talk on a portable and hit any of the other sites, and that voter technology will pick the best sounding audio, but we're still constrained by the coverage of that one radio site on Coburg. That is our primary transmit site. The technology we're talking about implementing here, we'd actually have the ability to transmit from all 3 sites or both sites. If you want to do just 2, you'd have the capability of transmitting from both sites at the same time, which would improve the coverage significantly.
But see,
Because
you don't
you're
have
basically able to
software.
transmit from both sites without having
That's where you're
to
getting-
turn off the Coburn transmitter first. And then, first you have to turn off Coburn, then you have to turn on Taylor to do that currently. And that's a set of touch tones that has to be sent to disable the repeater mode on Coburn, and then re-enable the transmitter mode on Taylor.
Okay.
So that they don't
Chief
compare.
Shartner, I see that you have your hand. I see that you've raised your hand.
Yeah, I was just waiting my turn. Margaret, you're absolutely right about the antennas. That's the number one key thing. I'm not going to give any false hope, but I have been working with Neshoba Regional Dispatch, and we are trying to do a regional channel between Berlin, Harvard, and Lancaster. I do have those chiefs on board, and there is grant funding out there, but we're looking at probably 12 to 18 months. Our antennas, I think, are absolutely important to do ASAP and would actually work with the new system. I'm not sure, however, if the grant would allow them building the third tower. So maybe that's where we should be keeping our funding for the NRP in case we have to have a matching fund to the grant to put up a third tower. But there is hope that the grant will pick up a very large portion of this.
Interesting. I was hoping somebody would address this fiber installation around town that Lee kept referring to. I'm not quite sure I understand what that is and what that involves. Either chief, I'm assuming. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll let Chief Clark talk about that. He's the one who actually shot that fiber quote.
Okay.
Can you hear me, Anna?
I can.
Okay. As was explained very well earlier in the presentation, the copper wired Verizon lines that I think they call them RTNA, they used to anyways, not being maintained by Verizon.
Right.
And they will be, and so if one goes down, one goes down. There's not a high degree of efficiency for them to get it fixed quickly. So the next best option after that to do the same exact job, it's just different technology, is to bring the fiber optic in to connect the sites together. Also gives you other things, capabilities beyond just the radios, because they'll bring in, I believe the company that I talked with said a 12 pair fiber optic line tie in the 2 repeater sites with the public safety building. And that's where they would get access at the public safety building. Again, I'm at 30,000 feet. I don't know what like Lee said, I don't know about gold connections, like in the how they do it exactly, but they bring it into the public safety building, then they connect to the regional dispatch someplace in the public safety building.
So
And would want to bring all those sites in, and it's just the new, it's not new technology, it's being used everywhere.
It's much
but it just
faster.
would be an upgrade from the existing copper RTNA Verizon lines in a more efficient way with backup to carry that signal from the repeater sites to the public safety building to regional dispatch.
And is that part of what we discussed last time in that previous, I'm going to call it an estimate?
Yep, that was
Okay.
in there to set that up, yep.
Okay.
That's like, again, we talked about from the beginning of doing a phased approach. So we have options, and I'm open to the, whatever's the most efficient way to get the job done so that we can get that operational safety factor built into our radio system. So it's like, and I have to call, I actually got a message just yesterday from the fiber optic guy to see where we were. And I can just tell him at 30,000 feet what we're doing. And I think that last quote that we got also included going to the school on South Street, but we didn't need to do that after the CM Geeks looked at it. We don't gain anything by going there because they already have a loop with the Tahanto. So they took that off and lowered the cost of that, and it was there. But if we did do something on the south side, like Lee said, with fiber optics, we'd have to run it down South Street to wherever it's going to go. So it's like, it's just a way to do it. Like Lee said, really efficient way that he brought up too was the microwave, and this one's efficient too. It's just that it's out in, it's hanging on the poles, just like a wire. Pole
Right.
comes down, you lose the capability.
Right.
So it's like, there's pros and cons to every single bit of the technology that we're talking about.
Now, this current discussion that we're having now with the $800,000 price, is that in addition to the $300,000 to $400,000 that we were talking about last time, or does that $800,000 include
I think it
that $300,000 to $400,000 we were talking about last time?
I can't answer that question. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
You know, what we had before.
So before we,
Talking about, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Because
before we were talking about the fiber optics and connecting the two towers, for like, you were asking for an additional 44,000 over your 315 that you had. I just want to know if that was sort of the first iteration, and the 800,000 is now the second iteration of the same project, or if they're two separate projects. And I see that Chief Shartner has his hand up if you want me to let you off the hot seat, Chief Clark.
No, I'm not on a hot seat. I get in a hot seat out in the street. This is nothing. So it's like, this is just like, I get, the second part of that with the Lee has been primarily Chief Shartner.
Okay.
Speak better about that. That first couple of pages there with the P replacement, associated antennas, the fiber optic connection to the building. That's what I was primarily involved with. And then this came out when you wanted to have additional information. This is where it kind of like blossomed into the plan that we have now. So it's like,
I see.
Okay. Chief's I'm like, hopefully his team's winning.
Okay, Chief Shartner, you have
right.
good things?
And I'll give Chief Clark an update 16.5. So the first round is the Taylor Road site and Covert Road site, and that was fiber optics run to both sites. And then of course the topic came up that we need to add the south. So when I got Lee involved, I had him add a site in the south to show the cost difference. That's $830,000 for all three sites.
Okay.
Around $400,000 for the two sites.
Okay.
But you know, from my point of view, I mean, I've been using this radio system since the day it was installed. We've had some major issues, even back as far back as 2013, 14. It was going to be a union issue, and then we're told we're going to get new radios. Everybody backed off. Then it was going to be another union issue in 2018. We backed off because we were told it was going to be taken care of. So as far as like, this isn't something new. This has actually been going on since about 2014, and the system's getting worse and worse. But I truly believe that if we can at least get our antennas done for the 32 or whatever, like I said, I really don't want to deplete that $344,000 that we have in case we need matching funds to go with the Neshoba to have them install $1 million system, or say matching funds of $300. But that is the third. That is all three sites at 830 versus two sites for around the 400 mark.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
One more comment, please, Anna.
Oh, yeah.
One more reminder about that money that came from Rockwell is they were required on the building by the building code to install mediation on all those apartment buildings down there. We allowed them to bypass a significant savings. It would have cost them like over $900,000 to put them all in. They walked away paying us $300 and something thousand, and walked away with all the cash in the hand when they sold the whole project to a management company and walked away. They didn't even care. So it's like my ability, or I'm missing the word. I apologize, but my allegiance to them is very slim because they knew they were making money and they turned and walked away. So it's like
I don't know. I know
seed
they're
money
talking, but I
available.
can't hear.
I'm not tied.
Can't turn it
we
up
have to,
anymore because it's
required to do something with something. If the two that we have, or the three repeater program covers a high percentage of the town, like Lee said, then I'm happy with that, you know?
Okay. Any questions from the audience?
Well, it's hard when I didn't hear it. Okay, just thank you. I'll have to go and listen to it again.
Okay, I think we're all questioned out at the moment. Any other last,
Words of wisdom.
yeah, words of wisdom?
I have a question.
You do?
I do.
Wait, we discovered we have a question in the audience.
Oh, questions? Awesome.
Just one, and I'm sorry, it's for the chiefs, I apologize. But, chiefs, have either of you started to do a capital request for this, or is it too soon? The capital,
I'd rather defer on a capital request. I'd like to fix the antennas and work more with Neshoba Valley,
all right,
Regional Mitigation Center, before we actually commit, or even, it gives me heartburn thinking of the price tag we're looking at.
all right.
You know, neighboring town just spent $2 million, so I'd like to get further in, but I'd like to at least get new antennas up to
Okay.
show that we're doing our best for our people that work under us.
So I'm going to recommend that you submit a capital request just for the antennas at this point then, if the capital planning committee is okay with that. I think,
Yeah.
Yes,
let's start with
please.
that and get that in as soon as possible.
Yeah, definitely, I can get that done tomorrow.
I make a motion that we support.
Can I add that I'm not trying to spend more money by all means, but I don't know, you know, you say 36,000 or something. They may want to give themselves a little cushion just to be on the safe side, so they're not coming back.
Yep. And I would also propose that the funding source, there is an available funding source, that the funding source either be from the $300,000 NRP funds. We know that you have money in public safety special stabilization, but that's going to require a town meeting vote. The NRP funds will not. And so I would suggest that the recommended funding source be from the NRP funds. And yes, Janet, I agree. I think they do need to give themselves maybe $40,000 or so, need to give themselves a little bit of a buffer.
Just a
Yeah.
question, because then they're going to be coming back, and I understand the necessity, and I also hope, I don't know, to me, it seems like batteries that are this far outdated, that maybe some type of maintenance plan get put into the capital planning as well, or some type of line item budget, so that those items don't get overlooked, because, you know, it seems like maintenance should be something that should be done.
My understanding from our last meeting is that we do currently have in the fire or police budget, or both, budgeted expenses for maintaining these sites. But I guess my impression is we're not actually getting good maintenance out of our current budget.
I don't think it's a specific
Well, I'm
line
looking
item.
at
No.
the pictures they gave, and I mean, there's things that are broken and batteries that are 2007?
Yeah.
I mean, it just seems a little bit weird.
Okay.
I don't.
Can I make a motion?
Yeah. So
What did we say?
Eloise would like to make a motion.
I make a motion that the capital planning approve $40,000 to upgrade the antennas for public safety.
I second that. Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
Upon receipt of the capital request form?
Well, I'll take a verbal for tonight.
Okay, so there's a motion on the table. Does anybody have any questions or concerns that they want to bring up before we bring it to a vote? No? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 I say no, because I want my capital request form first.
Okay.
Okay, that's cool. Obviously, we assume that these antennas will work with the new systems.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that would be our assumption, that any new antennas purchased would have to work with any system upgrades that we look for in the future. Maybe not any, but any system upgrades done within the next 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, so we don't waste our money.
Yeah, but that should be covered in the capital request,
Yes.
I would like to say. Okay. Any further questions for Lee? Lee, I think I cut you off when you were making closing remarks. Feel free if you have anything to end with before we let you go.
No, absolutely. I mean, again, we brought all of this up just so that everybody understands what it is we walked into, what it is we're dealing with. Again, can I put new batteries on those base stations and get them some additional runtime? Absolutely. Does it make sense to do that on this system, or do we just put new batteries on the new base stations? I agree that getting modern base stations that have modern support, they can plug directly into the fiber cable that's going to come here. Again, we've got a third site with microwave links, and basically a whole new site being built. I'd be happy to peel all that out of there, but I just wanted to add that I am working with Neshoba Regional Dispatch. I'm working with the town of Lancaster. I'm working with Lunenburg. I pretty much work with all the member communities in that area. We're building similar sites, similar technologies nearby, in, for instance, Leominster. So we work largely in that area with a lot of your surrounding communities, and are working to implement this exact type of solution around you. Just so you're aware. Again, I have a meeting set up with Neshoba about this forthcoming project to tie in some of these other bits and pieces to try to make a regional overlay. I understand there's a lot of regional support. I'm glad to see it. I think that's really a great way to share resources and really spend efficiently. And again, everything we're doing here, just to reiterate on your vote, everything we're looking to do here is what we need to do that regional bit anyways. The same antennas, same feed lines. The only pieces that would change, if we ever get to the filtering section of this, would be the additional cavities in that filter network that would be in the cabinet. So just know that we're looking at this as a long-term investment by putting up the right stuff the first time. And again, everything we proposed to date has been per NFPA 1221, which is the set of standards that regulate how you maintain public safety radio communication systems. It's the recommended practices for public safety networks. So we go forward with that in mind. And again, can we cut back? Absolutely. Can we change the sites around? Absolutely. We just need to understand that there's a cost to acquire a new site in the southern portion of town, regardless of where we physically place it. And again, even if we're to use a site like Homewood Suites, we need to understand that there's some unanticipated costs that really, until we can say with pinpoint accuracy and a piece of chalk, this is where I'm going to place the cabinet, and this is where I'm going to place the proposed tower on the roof, I can't get a structural engineering firm to come in and tell me that it's safe for the people that are inside the building.
Didn't want
Yep.
to because he said
just
then it takes it off the tax rules.
That's the only asterisk I have is we're talking about a lot. What if we do this? What if we do that? We can put a general number based on previous projects we've worked on of that complexity, and put that down on paper, and then we understand that we're also dealing with post-COVID inflation on some of those numbers, because a lot of those projects were completed prior to COVID. So just sharing that with you just as a point of view. But that's all I have, if nobody else has any questions.
Any
Thank
questions? No. Thank you so much, Lee, for coming and walking us through all of this step by step. That was wonderful.
Well, I look forward to work with you in the future, and thanks for having me.
Thank you, Lee. Good presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, I have a question on itself. It's still not clear to me. It's 830 is total system, less generators. and less fiber optics.
Yeah. That's what that's,
I understood with fiber optics.
No, it says here, less
I
networking.
think Chief's working separate. Is Chief
Generator
still
and
here?
networking.
No,
Oh, okay.
he left.
Okay, that's all.
Yeah, I thought yeah, that's where I was a little confused because Lee said,
Oops, I'm still here.
oh, you're still, so you said the
Yes.
fiber optic system was separate, but Chief Clark said the fiber optic system was included in that 800, in
Good.
the
So-
830,000 on your slide deck.
So the 830,000 on the slide deck was assuming a bunch of things with the southern site. I had given Chief, well, actually I gave it to both of the chiefs, I believe. We did up a quick number on what it would take for routing equipment for all of the fiber sites, assuming we retain the public safety site as the center. And I don't recall what that is off the top of my head, but it might be $20,000-$30,000 worth of equipment. Plus, we had some monitoring equipment that was going to be central at the public safety complex, only because it's protected by generator. But
So it's not included in this then?
that was not included in this. But again, this was a rough order of magnitude, pie in the sky. Hey,
Yeah,
if we
it
give you a
wasn't
blank slate
fine-tuned.
with 3
Yeah.
sites, what
Just
would it cost to
about.
do this?
Okay.
Okay.
With the only assumed upgrades being the cabinet at Taylor Road was included in that, a cabinet for the southern site, whether it be on the roof of Homewood Suites or at this garden site. We included the cabinet in there. We included the cost of the pole in there. We included the basically the excavation, the not hydro excavation, vacuum excavation of the hole. We assumed that DPW would do the haulage of the remaining dirt, try to save you some civil costs there. But, again, we drew a lot of assumptions to come to that number. So that 830 isn't a hard figure in the sand. We really need to understand what we're going to do in the southern portion of town.
Right.
If we're going to do anything there at all.
Well,
I
we
think
have to
maybe,
put River Run being
and again,
higher
just
than
based on the feedback I'm
community
hearing,
garden.
I
That would
think
get
the
you
idea to
something.
try to fix the, basically replace and modernize what you have now would be a good path forward for you. And then again, as was suggested prior, we could see where the coverage lies once those sites have been built, and then you can figure out what your southern portion looks like at that point in time. Because nothing you're investing into this today isn't going to be compatible with what we're doing, be it in the regional project or in this space proposal.
Wonderful. That all sounds great.
Okay,
Okay. Thank you.
you're welcome. Bye-bye.
Okay.
How much would the generators cost? Do you think? I was asking. Like, John, give me a ballpark.
30 grand
30 grand for the generators, you think?
each.
Okay. For times 3, right?
Times 3.
One for each.
Why are they so expensive? If you buy it
Generators?
for a house, it's 20 kilowatts, generator is $10,000.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Because
just
it's
made up a
probably
number.
a commercial grade as opposed to a home
Yeah.
grade.
Yeah.
And it has probably,
Plus it has to be online and all that
and
stuff.
it has
yeah. But still,
built-in redundancies.
I'm guessing you'll be getting a capital request form very soon.
That would be nice to
I
see.
saw one tonight.
Really?
Yeah,
Where?
on my computer.
Oh. I haven't seen one.
That would be, it would be very wise to get moving on that as quickly as
Yeah.
possible.
32,000 to replace the antennas and
that's gonna-
I know.
and that's going to improve things significantly?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
right
then we'll-
before hurricane season, good.
Well, at least we won't be dealing with broken antennas before hurricane season, right?
Antennas full of water.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, can we go on to the second thing?
We can. What's the second thing on our
The
list?
second thing that was on was South Street.
Bridge.
Oh, I know.
Bridge.
Is Fred here?
No.
Okay. then
I know
I would
nothing.
say, I don't really have any updates, except we are still waiting for the small, to hear on the
grant?
small bridge grant program.
Okay.
We're expecting that the vast majority, if not all, of the project will be able to be paid from the small bridge grant program. So I think, and if there is anything left that we have to pay, it could be paid from Chapter 90 funds. So, as far as I know, we're just still
waiting.
waiting.
Good to go.
How about anything with ARPA funds, right? Because ARPA funds are also supposed to come through us.
Have you gotten any capital requests? I sent them out to everybody.
We have the playground.
We have the playground, and
We
you
approved the
that.
playground.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, you give us a request, we do our job.
There you go.
We're just waiting.
Yeah, I sent,
Did we tell Recreation that we approved it?
She was here, Julie was.
I know, but did you put it in writing?
Yes,
Okay,
you were here.
I know, but
Okay.
And I think we
didn't
got
put
it-
it in writing.
Oh, I
Yeah.
did, on her thing.
Okay.
And then I emailed
The board.
Margaret and the board.
Yep.
Okay,
Peg is looking into seeing if some engineering can be done on the leach field, the septic field for the 1870 Town Hall, which is actually on the common near the flagpole. So it's property of the First Parish Church.
Oh, that's funky, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah, and it's a 40-year-old system, and there are a lot of other things behind it. There's a lease agreement that was executed in 1959. It was good for 20 years. The town and the church never re-upped it in 1979 or 1999 or 2019, so it's been sitting out there. So there's gonna be, I think, it's gonna cause a little bit of a domino effect. But she said she wants to prepare a capital request form to have an engineer look at that. So the board's gonna be talking about that at the next meeting.
Okay.
we have the engineer in town, the one that did the library. Check
right.
with him.
That's right, Evan. Oh, yes.
Hmm.
Oh, boy, that's a good idea. That's a good idea.
Well, he seemed to work very well with
He
the Board of Health,
He sure did.
and that's important.
It was very good. Oh, he gave a lot of time and his expertise. It was great. And he met with DEP with us and everything. So, yeah, maybe we'll check with Evan. That's good.
Nice.
Now, what's happening with the roof for the old fire station?
Nothing yet. So I did ask Richard
And the
Hanks.
roof for here, too.
Oh, yeah, the roof for here. I got to get it going on the procurement for the roof for this. I understand that EPDM roofing materials are very scarce right now, but
Yes.
we're going to still try anyway. I did get, we did get an updated quote on the air handler, $23,000 over the $100,000 that's been appropriated. So I'm still going to go out for bid. That was under an energy performance contract, which I think is a very good idea because it guarantees performance. But the problem is it's $23,000 over budget now. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm just going to try to issue an RFP outside of the energy procurement process and simultaneously a roofing RFP, because those two projects are going to have to be coordinated.
Yep.
Yes. So so that's what I'm doing. I'm working on the I'm working on the RFP for both of those things simultaneously.
If there is an overage, are you gonna call a special town meeting, or would you use ARPA funds?
I'd ask the board for, I'd like to ask the board for ARPA funds, especially for that air handler project. I'd much prefer to do it under an energy performance contract. So, I know it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money,
It is.
but
Especially considering we started with 60, right?
60, and then we added 40, and now it's 23,000. It's $23,000 over that, and it could be 5 months out
Right.
because you can't get the parts. Yeah. So, yeah. Anyway, yeah, and the other, working on the recreation court upgrades, so I'm trying to get moving on that. I've been waylaid a little bit on some of these things, like major, but, I'm trying to catch up on some things now. So, the recreation court upgrades, that's gonna be another one that I have at least issued before the end of June, so.
Okay.
Is it,
Oh, I'm sorry, the old fire station roof. When I put the procurement out for this building, I'm gonna separately ask for the cost to do an
Okay, yeah.
EPDM roof on that building. Richard Hanks said that there would be a serious escalation in cost if we did the peaked roof. He said it would look great. He says, but do you really want to spend that money? What is that building going to be used for? So it's just something to think about. But I'll find out the rubber membrane roof first and see what we get.
Okay.
All right.
I'm feeling, I don't know, overwhelmed. That's not the right word, after.
I know.
Yeah.
That was quite the presentation.
It was.
I think that's everything on our agenda.
Yes.
Is it,
Except for review things from town meeting. I wasn't present at town meeting. Is there anything worth reviewing?
Wow.
The proceedings were just finalized today. And so I will be getting them out, but there was nothing that was.
nothing, yeah.
There was
Nothing
no-
exciting?
No debate at
drama.
all on the capital budget. No debate. I don't think.
No.
Is it true you're leaving us?
It's
Yes.
true. It's true. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe I'll stick around secretly in the background and see how I can help, but like officially
Thank you, yeah.
in June.
What
Yeah.
time?
I will adjourn us 9:00 on the dot.
Thank you all.
Bye,
Thank you, Janet.
Bye, Janet.
Bye-bye.